light, is what they say. Start recording. So this meeting is being recorded. It is the meeting of the United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council Planning and Zoning Committee. We are one of the 8 or 9 standing committees of United Neighborhoods Neighborhood Council. My name is Laura Myers, and I am the co-chair of the Planning and Zoning Committee and also current president of UNNC. And I would like to share our agenda while I am also talking, to say that the way UNNC has set up our committee structure is that we do appoint the chairs and co-chairs, but we do not appoint members of our committees. So the committees are comprised of stakeholders who attend, and for the evening, or for that matter, morning or afternoon, whenever a committee meeting is held, those stakeholders in attendance are considered members of the committee and may participate fully. And that also means following all the rules of conduct: don't interrupt people, be respectful, use proper language, et cetera, et cetera. And our recommendations are just that. They are recommendations to the governing board, and the governing board itself is elected, and their vote is the vote that actually counts in the end. So there aren't very many people here, so we'll do introductions in a moment, but I wanted to share the agenda. You can see that on the agenda, there's number 1 is 4 things: welcome, call to order, introductions, and the approval of the agenda. Tonight's agenda only has a few items. After this, public comments, then a discussion and possible action regarding an updated request from Truffle Brothers, the restaurant. The case number 5, case number ZA 2020-2060-F, 4000 West Adams Boulevard, has been continued at the request of the applicant until 2 weeks from tonight, July 21st. And then we'll have a brief discussion on the housing element update, which is a citywide plan. And we'll get to that in a minute. And if there's any follow-up to previous cases. So I'm going to ask that we approve this as our agenda. And again, number 5 being tabled or continued till July 21. Is there a motion to approve the agenda?
Motion to approve the agenda.
That was Mike. And
Yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Donna Jones.
Donna Jones seconds. Okay. Is there any, all in favor, just raise your real hands or your little blue hand. Is there, fine. And is there any opposition to this agenda? Okay. So I am, thank you. Well, and I'm going to stop the share. Okay. So the blue hands that I see up now are not opposition. They're just stray blue hands in favor, I assume. Okay, so introductions, since we just have a few people here, if we could go around the Zoom room, please. I'll call your name, Teresa.
Hi, I'm Teresa Masonette. I live on 8th Avenue, and I'm a newly elected board member of UNNC.
Okay, Blake.
Blake McCormick, resident of Harvard Heights on Westmoreland Boulevard.
Okay, Michael.
Representative for Avenues, living at 12th and 25th.
Okay, Carlos, if you're here.
Yep, sorry. Yes, representative for UNNC West Adams, on living on the corner of Adams and 9th Ave.
Okay. I don't know if David is here or not. We'll hear from him.
He is here.
If you could introduce.
I'm not representing anyone except myself, but I am here. I'm in the Avenues, 4th Avenue and 25th Street.
Okay, and Donna.
From West Adams Avenues, acting chair, Donna Jones.
Okay, and hi, Brittany, you just arrived, but we're just finishing up introductions. I don't see a microphone yet. So if you, oh, there you are. You want to introduce yourself? or not? Okay. Well, Brittany, who's just logged in, will probably introduce herself momentarily, but let's move on to public comment. So we have public comments on anything not on tonight's agenda. If anyone has a public comment to make, please raise your hand. About anything, ideally land use related, not on tonight's agenda, if anything. Okay, going once, going twice, gone. All right, so the next item on the agenda is Truffle Brothers. So just by way of background, that's case number ZA 2018. So that's the year 2018, 4478 CUB, conditional use beverage. At 4073 West Washington Boulevard in Arlington Heights. This is a follow-up to a previously approved case. Truffle Brothers, and which has a restaurant called, I can't pronounce this properly, Spazio Salameria, has already been approved by the planning department back in January 2019 for its request to serve beer and wine both at the restaurant in conjunction with a meal, and also to sell beer and wine in conjunction with the, if you've ever been there, there's a deli market for off-site consumption. So you can buy your food and go home and buy a bottle of wine to go with it, or you could eat there and drink there. UNNC voted in favor. We voted in a resolution in favor of this action back in November 2018. And the restaurant has had a temporary ABC license since July 2020, so we're a year now, renewed every 3 or 4 months. But the California Department of Alcohol Beverage Control, the ABC, now will be holding a hearing, I think, for the permanent license, and Truffle Brothers has requested an updated letter of support from UNNC. So what I'd like to do is share the screen. So if you haven't seen it in the advance agenda packet, our existing letter, which again is dated back in November 2018, and it's very simple. We voted, can you all see that? Okay, we voted to support the application to expand the restaurant operation because it was an already existing but much smaller restaurant, and we supported the conditional use permit to sell alcoholic beverages for both on-site consumption and for off-site sales. So that's the summary, and then you'll see the specific motion, and the vote was 14 yes, 5 no, and 2 abstentions. So that's the prior action. So the question is, I mean, normally, do I need to keep this still up on the screen, or are we good to take it down? Normally, we would just go ahead and write an updated letter, but because we've just had an election of new board members, and it just felt proper to bring it to the attention and have a little bit of a discussion. We don't usually have a sunset on our decision making for the obvious reason we would double and triple our workloads, but that doesn't mean much of anything. So I'd like to see if there's any discussion on this matter from anyone. Okay, everybody wants to make a recommendation. I mean, it's okay. I do need to say, oh, Michael, hang on one second. I think I need to say something. I am a really regular customer at this restaurant, but I've never purchased beer or wine. So I don't feel that I am conflicted, but I am a fan of the food, and they held me over through COVID because they were a very safe feeling and comfortable place. So I'm hoping that doesn't mean I have a conflict of interest. Just as a few meetings ago, one of our other new board members said that he keeps Johnny Pastrami's in business because he just walks there every day and has another pastrami sandwich. I feel like I help keep Truffle Brothers in business. Anyway, Michael, And then David.
Sure. I'm not a regular customer, but have been there several times. I believe that the main concerns, at least for the immediate community, is whether or not beer and wine sales will be responsible beer and wine sales. And I have no doubt, based on the way they're running their organization, that that will be the case, and we won't have them, they won't be selling 40 ounces or any of that crazy stuff. It'll be quality. And so I think we should support the expansion. It's very simple.
Okay. David?
Hi, I've been a resident here in the Avenues for about 35 years now, and the commercial strips have come along very slowly, shall we say, in the 35 years. And I think that both the residential neighborhoods here and the commercial community are extremely fortunate to have a company, an organization like Truffle Brothers investing their money, taking over a vacated, abandoned, brutalistic, meaning very concrete and not terribly warm and fuzzy for a lot of people's building, a building that B of A had its branch in and left in our neighborhood. And they've put a great deal of investment money into it. It's attractively redone. They are serving lunches for people in the community, business people, anybody here, retirees, whoever wants to go over there. They have brought in, because I've been there many times pre-COVID, they have attracted a number of other restaurateurs, chefs from across the city, prospective restaurant owners who are looking at maybe Jefferson or Adams or Washington for a future location. So they've been actually a catalyst for our neighborhood for responsible economic development along some of our major streets. I have never seen any bad influence or activity surrounding or related to Truffle Brothers. The quality level of their food and frankly, the pricing of their alcohol isn't going to allow itself to sort of be taken advantage of by anyone. Someone's going to go there for a purpose. They're going to enjoy it. They're going to think our neighborhood is really great, that we have places like Surface and Truffle Brothers. And I think that they've been an extremely strong contributor to our neighborhood. And I would hope that you as a committee would agree to take this on and reactivate a letter in support. So I think they're very important for us. Thank you.
Blake, I know you walk back and forth and back past it, but I don't know if you patronize the restaurant.
I haven't patronized it, and just based on yours and David's endorsement of it, I'm feeling a little guilty for not having done so. So I think I've been in there one time, but I'm going to give it a shot. And I think what David said, it's, in a world where we're bereft of things like that, it makes sense to support something that is a positive force. So here.
So I am aware that someone, and I believe they're actually anonymous. I don't mean anonymous.
Another question,
to us.
Laura, please.
Pardon?
Another question related.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Is anyone aware? Does anybody know what's happening at that corner adjacent to the library where there's something happening?
The park is being rebuilt.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. If it had any effect on the truffle business at all.
Oh, no. And
okay.
Right. So what I was going to say is I am aware that a person who lives in the community, but I don't know who it is, somebody anonymous, has had back in 2018 and then currently filed it's sort of not a complaint exactly, because well, maybe it is, basically saying that they fear this restaurant, if it is allowed to sell alcohol, and know that he's been selling it for a year now, would create crime and potentially increased homelessness at the adjacent library and park that's under construction, and across the street, the church and school. So I don't know if, I'm kind of drafting a proposed motion that basically would say that we recommend to the governing board that it write an updated letter of support for the restaurant. But do we also say that the restaurant operations support our community and is not a nuisance? Yeah, Teresa. You're muted, but it looks like you're shaking.
Yes, I agree with what you said, what David said, what Michael said, and Blake. And I just feel like we're all in agreement here. So let's vote if we have to vote, and then send it to the
Okay.
board, and then go to the next agenda item, because
Okay, that's fine. So I just posted in the chat a proposed motion that this P&Z committee recommends that the UNNC governing board write an updated letter of support for Truffle Brothers. I hope I spelled that right. Spaccio Salameria for the restaurants hearing at ABC. The restaurant operations support our community, and I guess they are not a nuisance rather than is not. All right, are not nuisance. Okay, so I'd like to know who's making the motion and who is seconding.
I can make the motion.
Blake moves.
I'll second it, Donna Jones.
Thank you. Okay.
And I see plenty of people exhibiting the behavior that that person was concerned about, and it's definitely outside the hours of operation of Truffle Brothers.
Oh, yeah, no, I really, I have never purchased a bottle of wine there, but I've looked at them and they range in price from something like $25 on up over $100.
Right.
So I honestly don't think somebody is going to walk in to drink that by the side of the road. It's possible, but anyway, so.
Laura, that's hilarious.
Well, okay. Okay, so what I'd like to do, I mean, obviously it's hard to do a vote, but for voting, first of all, David, I'm gonna lower your hand. So if you're in favor of this motion, what I'd like you to do is raise your hand, and either the blue hand, the visual hand, or the reactions hand. Okay, and I'm in favor. And David's in favor. So the only person not voting is Carlos. But you can voice vote if you'd like, Carlos, or you can vote no. Or abstain. Anyway, motion.
I'm sorry. I vote yes. Sorry, I was trying to navigate the way through, and it's embarrassing. I of all people should know how to do this. So sorry about that.
So it passes unanimously. Okay, thank you. And I'm gonna lower everybody's hands. So so I will ask executive committee, not ask, I'm gonna tell executive committee that this is an item. There's a little question mark in my mind as to how large or small of a board meeting we have in conjunction with the retreat versus August 5. So for board members, we have the retreat on July 24th. It will have a small board meeting within it. I'm guessing this won't make it onto that agenda, and it will be heard August 5, but I will check with executive regarding that. The only reason we would do it early is if that ABC hearing is early, which I don't know. Okay, the next item on the agenda is the housing element update. And I think I'm going to read some words out loud here, and then I'm going to share the screen with the website. I'm going to try and do that. I'm not very good at that. But anyway, there's a citywide housing element update. Is the plan to house LA, and the draft plan was released, and it has a comment period that extends all the way to September 9th, 2021. So we do not need to take any sort of action on this today, even though I wrote possible action, but we do have time to attend webinars and learn more about it, and still take it to governing board and if we wanted to, and have a letter written about it. So, but basically every 8 years or so, the city has to update the housing element and determine how we would provide enough housing to house everyone that we think will be living here in Los Angeles. And I'm going to first share the screen. If I was smart, I kept this up. I did. With an article that appeared in the Daily News. And I'm sorry, I did not post this in the advance agenda packet. So if you're on the phone, I apologize. But the Daily News wrote an article that appeared on July 4th that basically says the city floats a plan to add 500,000 housing units by the year 2029. So the reason they're floating the plan of 500,000 is because the state actually told them they have to do 500,000. So it's not kind of any individual city council member or any city planning staffer who's saying we need 500,000 units. The state of California said we need 500,000 units. And of that, interesting to me, 200,000 units reserved for lower income residents. In the past, it was the number of units proposed was split rather more evenly between affordable and market rates. So I'm a little surprised it's not 250 for affordable in the plan. But what this means isn't that the city's going to build housing. They're not. What they're doing is showing or creating capacity in the citywide in the various neighborhoods community plans to be able to show within reason that it is feasible that someone will build housing to the tune of 500,000 units. And the other change this time out is that the state is requiring the cities throughout the state to demonstrate that these are real parcels and real community plans and not just some idea, that it would actually be feasible. And I do not know how that's going to happen. So the other thing they're trying to do is make sure it's going to be spread not just throughout the city, but in particular in West LA and the Valley where there's more amenities. So I'm sure that there's gonna be a lot of pushback to that also across the city. So the Daily News, that's their story. And now I want to just share the screen if I'm able to. Here, hang on one second, because I need to. I'm sorry. We all are learning as we go with this Zoom, myself included. So I'm going to try and share the screen with. Well, I guess I'm just gonna click on this and share because. Can you guys see the housing element in front of you? Are you seeing the internet? Okay, so where you find this is at planning.lacity.org/plans-policies housing element housing-element-update. I don't even know what that's called. #draft-plan. So I'm just going to highlight this right there if you can see it. And I can, if I didn't share this link with you before, I can do so after. But essentially, if you go to that page, you can see, you can do an executive, you can download the executive summary by clicking on this appendix. You can download the housing needs. No, you can't. There's a housing chapter 1. All right. So actually, so under chapter 2, you see there's a whole bunch of different individual appendices that you can download if you want to read the entire thing. This adequate sites for housing. So this is the new thing where they actually have to demonstrate and provide an inventory of adequate sites for housing. This is very technical, it's very complicated, and yet we'll probably all have to read it. at some point soon. So one of the things that they wanted to do this time is to evaluate how well we did the last time. So I should tell you that in 2007-8, I was on the task force for the housing element as one of the 60 people pulled together from various places in the city to advise the planning department. And in 2013, John Arnold, my co-chair, was on the task force. But UNNC, and for that matter, I don't think anyone in this general area was asked to be on this time out task force. But you can see what the goals and objectives and policies were, and they're evaluating how well we have done. And what the city is saying is that the review is that we did build, or at least issued enough building permits for the housing we were expected to do. And then lastly, but not unimportantly, is the housing goals, objectives, policies, and programs. So this is a summary, but you can click on that to see what it says. I'm going to click on it now because I don't know what it says. Well, I'm not going to open it up. So each of these things that you click on become, as you can see, a PDF that you can download. So I'm going to cancel that. So I'm going to stop the share and say that, oh, can I put the link in the chat? I definitely could have put the link in the chat, and I still will. Sorry. When I'm doing this, I can't see the chat. So I'm putting the link into the chat. That's such a great idea, and I don't know why I didn't think of it. And there is the link. Okay, so before we move on to anything else, I'm going to also say for the chat, I'm going to remind everybody that if you have your chat box open, if you put your cursor down at the bottom of the black screen, right in the middle is the word chat, click on the word chat. You can bring up the chat, but then you can also see there's 3 little dots in the bottom right-hand corner. If you click on the 3 little dots, you see the phrase save chat. So you can save the chat and get that link, or copy and paste it right now, or email me later and I can send it to you. It does occur to me that with the new state laws saying that every single backyard anywhere in the state, including anywhere in Los Angeles, is now eligible to have a by right ministerial ADU. When you take that law and then you understand that the city has at least 500,000 separate residential parcels, that we almost meet that 500,000 just by saying everyone can have an ADU. But that is not the goal of this program. So I am going to take the webinar tomorrow. I'm signed up. On the agenda, you'll see the links to the the 2 webinars, but I can also post them here if you'd like. And hear more about what they've done. But again, my belief is that what the planning department is trying to do is update the San Fernando Valley plans and the West Side plans to add more capacity there. That may or may not be a successful effort based on the politics of that. Okay, I've been talking too much. Anybody else want to speak, talk, chat about this? No. Oh, Teresa.
Thank you, Laura. I just have a question. Does this in any way have anything to do with SB 10, or by supporting this, are we going to be somehow putting ourselves in jeopardy of getting, diluting our single family residents in the avenues?
Well, since I haven't read the policy things, I will tell you that back in the year I sat on the task force, we had as a policy / goal that new housing efforts should be on the commercial corridors primarily, because citywide, because essentially there's 3 times more capacity on the corridors that would ever have been used for plain commercial. And we put that in as a policy, and that has been the policy for a very long time. So one of the things I am going to look for in reading this document is to make sure it's still there, that as a policy. So I think from a neighborhood council perspective, it's not about supporting it or opposing it, but really drilling down and making sure that those policies that are beneficial to us are in the document, because this is the governing document that every housing project proposal that has any entitlement at all requested, they have to say, and we meet this policy or that policy of the housing element. Michael, then Carlos.
Yeah, I just want to attempt to put this into perspective. Laura, you said 500,000 housing units in the Los Angeles area in general.
Yeah, over the,
That's what I
yeah,
understood.
in that time, and it's
Next
in
9
a,
years.
yeah, it's in a time period.
I get it.
Yeah,
I get it. 9 years. Let's call it 10. Let us understand that Crenshaw Crossing, as large as it is only adding some 400 units to
correct.
the general population,
Right.
which means we need 1,000 of those units over the next 10 years, or an average of 10 Crenshaw Crossing units per year
Right.
being added to the city housing stock. It's
Correct.
unbelievable.
Correct. And this is much, so again, to put it in another perspective, for the 2008 one that again covered 8 years, the target number was 113,000 units, capacity for 113,000 units. And in the one in 2013 was actually fewer, because come the 2010 census, one of the things that the 2010 census revealed was that the population projections from the 2000 census were off by several million. I mean, too high. So we did not increase. Again, this is region wide, and not the city is particularly, but the projections projected too high, and the theory was that the 2008 recession killed population growth. I'm not sure that that was the ultimate reason, but the projections, so the numbers required for 2013 were lower. The thing that's different this time is not just that it's so high, but that there's more mandate to it, that they actually have to show that it's reasonable to assume that these lands that you're pointing to are also available for development. I don't know how they're going to do that. Carlos.
Hi guys. This is in reference to, I guess, the question on SB 10. I believe, I could be wrong, but I do remember there were some conversations with regards to ADUs and residential single-family homes, but there was also some discussion with regards to, once that did, obviously pass, that there were also discussions with regards to rent control, right? That was going to bring in those single-family residential lots that actually had 2 homes, right? Whether or not they were on the same lot or not. If a homeowner had 1 home and they built an ADU, or actually had another home somewhere else, whereas right now that extra home is not brought in under rent control, that there was a really good possibility that that second home or ADU would be brought in under rent control. So that was just something that I know I'd heard of a number of different conversations, but when I heard SB 10, that's what kind of made me think of that. So just kind of.
Yeah. I actually, again, I haven't read, this is a huge document. I haven't read it yet. It was just released going to the webinar. I do not know if rent control is even a part of it, but the housing department's involved with this, so it might be. I just don't know. On a statewide level, I believe there's some degree now statewide of rent control. It does not affect individuals who own rental property, meaning if Tom Smith buys a second house and rents it out as Tom Smith, it doesn't affect him. But LLCs and other sort of corporate holding companies, I think, are now on a statewide basis subject to some degree of rent control. It's nowhere close to the kind of rent control we have here in LA for apartments. I think you could raise your rent 8 or 10%, even if
No,
you're under rent control. So,
it's a max. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
It's a max of 3%.
Here in
and-
LA, but not
right.
on the state law.
Right, but that 3% is frozen now. You can't do an increase at all during the pandemic, obviously, naturally. But I wanted to, again, this was something that, since I'm kind of tied into that business, just kind of an FYI that's the discussion that they're having now, where it's one of those pieces where it might be revenue driven. I'm not too sure, but that was definitely something that was being brought on the table that that's not in place now. Just like you mentioned, if you have a second home, right? Then it's not under rent control, but they want to bring in now the second home, and that conversation was brought up with the whole idea of allowing ADUs right on the same lot. So that was just kind of something for folks to think about.
Right. I just don't know. Again, I'm going to circle back to this housing element. I don't know if there's any chapter about rent control or anything like that. Because I haven't looked at it yet. There wouldn't have been in the past. Well, in fact, one of the common phraseologies in these kind of studies are, what are the barriers to housing production? So rent controlled buildings are a barrier, weirdly enough, to housing production because they're not easily demolished, thank God. So that you can build a bigger building. But, so they are actually considered a barrier, not a boom. But I don't know how this plan addresses that. This is being developed with deadlines. It has to be turned in. This is just state law by December, but the project started before George Floyd, before social justice and equity actions at this city and so many others. And they're re-looking at a lot of these policies through that prism, but they have to do it really fast because there's a real deadline of when they turn it into the state. And I will say LA does a good job of complying with the law, for good or bad. Back in the year 2008, there are some cities who are highly resistant to housing production. I'm saying this in a nice way. The city of San Marino literally put in its plan that it submitted to the state that its plan for affordable housing would be creating more housing for the servants of the people who live in San Marino. I mean, seriously. And that was their affordable housing. And they were not going to consider putting apartments on Huntington Drive or whatever the other streets were. Yes, I know, it's a joke. I'm not joking though. I mean, I actually ended up writing an article for somebody about this. So, so from a UNNC perspective, we all need to read it before we make recommendations to the governing board. And since I myself haven't read it, but normally we would be focused on the policies as they affect our area. So what would we be looking for? Conservation of character neighborhoods would probably be a policy we want, but we also want to have more housing. I mean, UNSC has a real strong record of late of approving many units of housing because, it's just we're not turning away most housing. So when we go to a public hearing and saying this housing project sucks, it's we can say that not because we think all housing projects suck, but because that particular one, maybe it really isn't a good project, for example. But we've been working very hard, really, since we've at least 10 years. We didn't have a lot of big projects brought before us in the 2000s, but we have approved, probably not counting the Crenshaw Crossing, which if ultimately it's built, it's another 400 some units, but we have approved, and many are under construction, well over 1,000, maybe getting close to 1,500 units, of which well over 600 are affordable. And that's a pretty good record for one neighborhood council out of 99 in the city of LA. The other thing I was going to say is, as far as I know, there is zero intention in this housing element to come back to our community plans, the South LA plan or the West Adams, Baldwin Hills, Leimert plan, and revise them further to add more housing. That we've just finished that process, and there's no funding, and they're talking about redoing 16 or 18 plans out of 35, but ours is not among them. So I think we're good on that what we have is what we'll have. So I think it's the policy portions that we need to look at, not the worry about specific zone changes on specific blocks. I was going to say something else about that. Brittany, if you're here, I mean, if you are hearing me, because you hadn't spoken when I asked you to introduce yourself, are there other elements that you guys are looking at Redeemer, if you're here? And you are, maybe. But she has a lot of background noise, but nothing to her knowledge. Okay, so she's responded to me in the chat. Okay, well, that's my broad brushstroke, because that's as much as I can possibly do without having read the read the updated plans. Does anybody else have any questions about it? Okay, so moving on, and I will actually, here, I'm gonna put into the chat, and then we'll move on. Here are the links if you want to register for either of these webinars. And so actually moving on, the next item is really the last item, which is follow up to previous cases, ENS, old business, discussion and possible action. So today was the public hearing for Crenshaw Crossings, the first public hearing of 2 or 3. And Teresa knows this, Donna knows this. UNNC's governing board basically voted to support, let's see, we have exact language, support the project in concept, but we requested that the developer return to the community during future phases of design, including landscape design, I'm reading out loud, to seek input and further support. UNNC supports the density and intensity of the development at this site in the community. Plus, UNNC would like to have further input and discussion regarding the ratio of affordable units. So that was our motion. Unfortunately, there ended up being sort of a last minute push that used UNNC's, a position UNNC never took, as a means to get more community members out to the hearing, which is a good thing. More community members did come to the hearing, but the concern expressed was that UNNC was trying to remove some of the parking on the basis that the project was overparked. And so I just wanted to say to everybody here that although we did have a discussion at this committee a couple of weeks back where that was brought up, other things that were brought up at the same meeting was that no, there's neighbors who think it's underparked and are concerned about visitors or even residents of of this new building parking in their neighborhood because they didn't have parking in the building. And we took no position in the end. So I was a little concerned, enough concerned about the emails that went out that I did make a point of it at the meeting, at the hearing today, that we had not taken that position. I do also, however, want to make everyone understand that it is entirely possible that when that project goes to the City Planning Commission, those commissioners, I've heard them say many times for many other projects that they thought they were overparked. So that phrase overparked has become a thing. So I'm hoping that the community who's concerned about it will go to the Planning Commission meeting and monitor that one, because that's months away, but that'll be the important one, not today's hearing. And UNNC has acted, and that should be the end of it for us. So so that's my update. I can't think of anything else. Teresa, I can't tell if you're about to unmute yourself and say something. No, I see the hand moving. So does anybody else have any updates on any case that we've dealt with in the past? Donna?
Just wanting to comment on what happened today.
Thank you.
Overwhelmingly, for those people who didn't show up, they have big concerns, like we can understand the
Absolutely.
area closest to Crenshaw and the crossings development and the areas down by Lamert Park are very concerned about people leaving vehicles in their neighborhood and hopping the transit to the airport. And I understand, and we all do, because people hoard cars and will drop them where we live. We have the same problem. And they are not going to let this go. You don't have to worry, Laura. This is an issue they will follow all the way.
Right.
And as my comment was, if they want to underpark, they need to buy everybody a permit in the areas, in the radius of this development, a 24-hour permit, and then there's no more problem.
Right. Right. Well, and is not just give free, not just create the parking districts. That's the hard part, is the creation of the parking districts. And you're saying, and then that the permits be free.
Well, they can subsidize them for so many years.
Sure. Right.
Because they're the one making money out of this. The neighbors are not a penny.
Right. Well, I'm just saying the harder part of that is creating the parking districts, not the figuring out how to subsidize them.
Yeah, that we were lucky. We were truly lucky. And we had a lot of battles with people about it, but most people are thrilled that we were able to, because boats are being dropped north of the freeway all over the place. I don't know if you've noticed it, and all kinds of other, and Lord have mercy, when the city suspended enforcement of parking, it was ridiculous. And it became a real problem, but thank goodness where the permits were, even though they probably didn't have to, we were a little bit, people were more likely to follow the rules and stay with it. Because they're paying for permits.
Right.
Them, if you're going to pay for a permit, you want it used.
Right.
I have a question.
Michael, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question, Donna. I was not at the public hearing meeting, but just humor me for a moment. The parking structure that's currently there for parking for the use of the Metro Expo line to Santa Monica, it's available to park your car for no cost and get on the Metro and go to the beach. Is that correct?
Yes, but most people are not using it. I'm not
I understand.
sure
I understand that.
Safety, whatever. We, Laura and I discussed that.
I get that. I get that.
It's
That's
so
not,
much nicer to put it in front of your house.
That's not the
because
issue.
you'll watch it for them.
That's not the issue. If that parking structure is to be used for free for temporary metro parking if I want to go to the beach, then is there a difference parking at Crenshaw, the Crenshaw crossing, and going to the airport under the same auspices and using the metro system?
Yeah, Michael, the answer is that Metro made a decision not to include Metro parking in this Crenshaw crossings, even though it's a Metro joint development. They
Okay,
basically, I
didn't know
mean, in
that.
other words, the presentations and focus groups and small and larger community meetings started in March. Well, they presented to UNNC March 2nd, 2016. I went back and looked at my emails. So they started in February and March of 2016. This is 5 years out. And so in the initial meetings before the Metro issued a request for proposal, so we're now dealing with the development company that won the process of the request for proposal process. But before they issued the RFP, they were asking the community, what does it want? And pretty much what the community wanted, among other things, was Metro parking, meaning that the building would include joint shared use parking for riders of the train. But that was rejected by Metro, who is the owner of this. They will own the land, and the county will own the land, and the developer will only own the buildings. 99 years lease.
No, I get it, Laura. I get it.
So their opinion is that the number of spaces at the parking structure is sufficient. My concern triggered today at the hearing, because I hadn't actually contemplated this before, is the idea that once the LAX Crenshaw line actually goes all the way to the airport, because right now its terminus is not quite at the airport, that people will leave their cars for 3 days or a week, whatever, and or just under a week if they're avoiding parking, street cleaning tickets, and just leave them on the street. So what occurred to me today is that parking structure is shared with the church and is not available on Sundays. So what happens? Are people, if somebody leaves their car there, because that would be fine to go on a short trip, and comes back in 6 days, but it happens to be a Sunday, what happens? Is the car going to be able to stay there? And I don't know the answer. So I do think that needs to be further clarified, but it doesn't change this project. Metro approved this project on its land. So there's got to be a way to assure people that their lives, their adjacent lives, will not be ruined by the inability to park at any time, and yet somehow get this project off the ground, and most importantly, not have UNNC be used as the, hey, you have to go to this hearing because UNNC is trying to steal our parking from us. That's the thing that bothered me, because we aren't. And so anyway.
So Laura, do you really think that we would be accused of such a tactic?
We were accused.
Oh my God.
We were accused of.
Wow. That's not fair. Okay, I understand. Thank you.
There were people who were at the meeting, overheard the person's comment about overparking,
right,
and whether it should be included in what was taken to governing board.
right.
And they were angry. These people are super angry. You just don't even know. You heard very little of what actually happened at those in-person meetings,
Right.
that happened. Laura, you've been at some of them. You know what they
Oh,
were.
no, listen, I have been, I think I said this. I have been at so many in-person hearings over the years. And I do feel that the folks in North Leimert Park in particular have felt completely besieged by decisions made by the planning department, not on this project alone, but up and down Crenshaw, from Expo all the way to Hyde Park. Much of the zoning was changed when the community plan was updated, the West Adams, Baldwin Hills, Leimert Community Plan. So much of the zoning would allow by right buildings that are 75 feet tall on Crenshaw, and they back up to single family neighborhoods. But again, back to this whole thing with the housing element, that fits in with the citywide policy of pushing housing and mixed use development onto the corridors in order to conserve neighborhoods. It's just that neighbors in those neighborhoods don't feel very conserved when ginormous buildings would be allowed to be erected overlooking their backyards. So, you know, I mean, there's a lot of push-pull in all of this, because I think we all intellectually know we need to have more transit, we need to have more housing, and we all want to preserve the ambiance in our neighborhoods, because what is the point of having all of those other things if we can't enjoy our homes? So, you know, it's very complicated and a very difficult balancing act. So all I can say is I'm happy and proud that UNNC is the kind of neighborhood council that allows all voices to be heard. And I just in the future hope that just because people hear the voices, it doesn't mean that that's to take it as the action that has been taken, but rather that we're trying to build consensus, or in this case, compromise. And that's the other thing with this project. This is not a consensus project. This Crenshaw Crossings is a compromise after compromise after compromise on every different person's parts. So, and I think we need to accept that that's what it is.
Well, the reality is large developments and commercial developments along Robertson changed Robertson.
Yes.
The neighborhoods there became no parking for outsiders. Quickly, it wasn't even a battle.
Right.
You cannot park along there north of Wilshire or anywhere there unless you have permit. And that was established for those
Right.
communities. Along Crenshaw, it will be different unless people fight.
Right. And then again, we're having this conversation all under follow-up to previous cases, but in addition, at some point, this Crenshaw LAX line will be extended north, and there will be a station, and that might not be in our lifetime. You know, it could be as late as 2047 start time, but there's a station plan for Adams and Crenshaw, and then it goes up. I mean, at the moment, it would go up north to Venice, and then this is all underground, and make a loop over to Midtown, crossing where the metro station is right now at San Vicente in Venice, where the buses turn around. So, so there won't be a second station at Venice. It's just going to be underground to there. But I've already asked the question: if you're putting a station at Adams and Crenshaw, what happens above that? I mean, how does that affect the zoning, you know, in that 1 mile radius around? Because we've got our character neighborhoods, the HPOZ. So, you know, there's no funding to build this thing yet, but the EIR is being prepared now. The scoping meetings were earlier. So it's another thing we're going to keep watch on. And you may or may not, y'all may or may not be aware that we are creating a transportation subcommittee for this committee. And we're going to, that committee will keep watch on a lot of this stuff. Okay. Anything else?
No.
We got the 10 freeway because we didn't watch. So we just have to keep watching.
Yeah. And again, I was going to say, the reason this is all going to be a subway is that subway has to go under the freeway, just FYI. So I'm not sure the quote Adams and Crenshaw station will actually be at Adams. I feel it'll have to be a little bit south of there to be able to dip so far deep to go under the freeway. But that's a future discussion, and possibly, again, a discussion so far in the future that nobody who's on this call will be here.
This is not even close to yesterday.
Just don't know. Okay.
We'll talk.
Is there anything else?
We need anything to do?
Setting some records for early dismissal of the Planning and Zoning Committee.
This is what happens when John's not here, Laura.
No, no, no. This is what happens when we have to table an item. So, you know, and but still try to maintain our schedule of regular meetings. So, all right. I think we should call it a day if there is nothing else. Okay, we're done. Thank you so much. Well, let's end.
Awesome.
See y'all
Awesome.
later.
Bye. See you in 2 weeks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.